Hello and welcome back to the RamsTalkPodcast preview show. This week we've had a double bill, fixture congestion, mad. It's obviously the festive period, but we look to a Friday night fixture. We've just played Burnley. We've got a 0-0 draw. We're back at home and we're playing Portsmouth, a fond friend from League One who came up with us. And we've got Tom back again, 4-0 all over it to preview it with us. How are you, pal?
Very well, mate. Thank you for inviting me back. We were just saying this is our biannual tradition. Come on here and have a chat about football.
It is. I mean, we talked about League One last year. We're now both in the Championship, and we've obviously had very various starts, and now it's kind of become a bit even. You probably look at the start of the season with how we started, how you started, and you might think, or we might be more favourable, but as soon as we've gone down the lines of this week, I mean, it's probably turned the tide a little bit. So just kind of give Derby fans a little bit of a brief as to how you're getting on and how you're finding Championship life.
I think you're right that we now have had, if you consider the start to this point, it's not really a start. It's almost halfway through the season now, isn't it? However many games, 18, 19, 20 games almost. I think probably the best way to paint it would be if we were to beat you on Friday night, we'd be a point behind you. So I think that maybe tells you quite a lot in terms of how similar this part, well, the early part of the season has been for us both. We had a much worse start than you boys did, of course. The way I would explain it, and the way I have been explaining it to opposition preview fan channels that I've been on recently, is I'd split Pompey's start to the season up into thirds. So I do the first third, which would be the all singing, all dancing, crazy start where we went to Ellen Road, got a 3-3 draw. We had a couple of games against some really tough opposition. We had a sort of baptism of fire start where we had Luton, Sunderland, West Brom. Luton at the time, we were thinking coming down for the Premier League, we didn't think they'd be in the predicament that they are at the bottom. We of course had the Leeds game that I mentioned. We went away to Middlesbrough that month as well. That was all kind of in the August, September early period. We went away to Burnley on my birthday on the 21st of September and lost narrowly there. And that's kind of what I would describe as the first third where we were competing. The second third, we completely stopped competing. We just completely fell flat on our faces. I'd throw the Stoke 6-1 away in there. I'd throw the Cardiff 2-0, which could have probably been 4-5 or 6 even before half time. We were absolutely woeful that day. So there's a middle third there where we kind of completely lost our way, and we're picking up the odd result in a 0-0 against Sheffield United, which is probably going to be the best 0-0 of the season at home at Fratton Park. But yeah, there was just a period and a spell there where we were just really, really poor. And then the final third, I would say, is from, throw in Sheffield Wednesday at Fratton Park, where we lost 2-1 into that third as well. That was pretty dreadful. And then the last little bit is basically now, whereby I would say from the whole game a couple of weeks ago, where we got a point, we probably should have won the game, take the Plymouth result out of it. We've then gone on an unbeaten run where we could be 5 unbeaten if we are to avoid defeat at Pride Park on Friday night. So that's the best way I think I'd describe it, is that we've almost gone full cycle. We came out competing, lost our way. We're back competing again. We're picking up some results. We've 3 unbeaten at home, as I say, and 4 unbeaten in general. 2 really good wins in there in the last couple of weeks to month in terms of the Preston and the Bristol City one. I thought we were unlucky and probably deserved to win the game last night against Norwich. We had a goal disallowed for some unbeknown reason. Don't quite know why still. And I've watched it back and can't think why. So we come to Pride Park buoyant. And actually, Callum, we come to Pride Park with the pressure off a little bit. Whereas before this week, maybe we'd be coming up to your place with the weight of the Championship world on our shoulders a little bit. Whereas I feel like if we could come up to you guys, get anything and go home again, I think I'd be relatively happy with that. Whereas if the results haven't gone the way they have over the last couple of weeks, I wouldn't be saying that. So an indifferent start.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on there. I mean, I've been looking at your form and as you've broken it down for those listening and those watching, your last few games, there's some standout ties in there. You've got, the 3-0 against Bristol City, the 3-1 against Preston, teams that we've come up against this season for being Derby. Preston, we struggled to break down and got a draw. Bristol, we obviously beat, but that was obviously very early on in the season. Swansea came to our place and within the first 20 minutes really won the game. You got a draw out of there away. And then Norwich, again, a team that we had a tough game against, and you got a 0-0 draw. You're then coming into us on Friday, like you said, kind of that upturn in form has meant that you're now looking at it going, we might be at that point where we're looking for a positive result on the road. I mean, compared to last season and this season, has the squad changed much? Can you enlighten Derby fans if what you did in the summer and obviously how you're setting up this year?
You'll recognise a few names. So Colby Bishop is back, which is good from our point of view, and not great from a Derby County point of view, because he always seems to score at Pride Park every time he goes there. I think actually he is the only player that scored for Pompey at Pride Park in quite a number of years, really. The last since we've been playing each other in League One, I remember both the games up there he scored in. I looked at your squad earlier on and the teams you've been putting out, and I saw a few names that I recognised from League One, and it's not okay. There's a handful of new players in there, but it's not a massively changed starting 11 from my opinion on the outside looking in. I think it's probably safe to say the same from a Pompey point of view. Matt Ritchie's come back, obviously a Pompey boy, and has gone and had an illustrious career in the Premier League. Marlon Pack's dropped back to centre-back. He was playing in the centre of midfield last time you saw him. So that's an interesting one. We've got a new goalkeeper who's looking really, really good, and really pleased with him. You'll remember Callum Lang. You won't have seen Freddie Potts, obviously on loan from West Ham and one of the top performers at Wycombe last season, one of League One's best players last year as well. So he will play, and I'm trying to think. You won't have seen Josh Murphy either. He's really come into his own. So he's in sort of red hot form at the moment. Other than last night, you couldn't really stop him scoring before that game. So I think he had sort of 4 or 5 goal contributions in the last few games before that. So yeah, we're in a position now whereby we have a bit of confidence and momentum about us. And as you guys know, that can be an incredibly dangerous thing when you're coming up against an opposition. But I take that with the fact that both this season and last season, I know you've won 4 out of your 9 games at Pride Park already this season, and Pride Park was a real fortress in League One last year. There weren't many teams that went to Pride Park and won the game in League One, and that's good to see from your point of view that that's sort of carried over into the Championship. So we know that a Pool 1 side is going to be aggressive. We know that you're going to do a lot of running. That's actually something that we've sort of tried to build on ourselves recently, and Messino's kind of changed tack a little bit. We've stripped it back to basics. We press a lot more aggressively. We are a little bit more direct than we otherwise would have been at the early start of this season. I think we've basically just sort of knuckled down and gone, right, how are we going to adapt ourselves to be able to compete in the Championship again? And he's basically tinkered around with it a little bit in terms of a tactical point of view, demanded a bit more from his players in terms of the legwork they're putting in, and it's actually reaping rewards and we're getting results. So I expect a really exciting game it's not too long now, is it? So a bit of a shame that it's an 8 o'clock on a Friday night. That's so we didn't do the same because Sky decide it all, don't they? But we had the same for Sheffield Wednesday coming to Fratton Park on a Friday night at 8 o'clock not too long ago, about a month and a half or so ago. So yeah, not a great trip from us, but I can imagine a real atmosphere as Friday night football under the lights at Pride Park. It's going to be something that we're going to be keen to get on the right side, and I think it's going to be a real challenge for us to do so.
Yeah, I presume. I mean, Friday night. I presume you're coming up maybe on the Thursday, Friday. I know I kind of keep an eye on your page and how you like to do an overnight stay and stuff.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we don't have a
the,
built-in hotel like Bolton and those sort of places when you used to go there.
No, so I've got some family that live in Leicestershire, so I'm going to go and see them on the Saturday morning after the game. But yeah, staying up with a couple of mates on the Friday night it's difficult because, I mean, people do it and you don't have to stay overnight all the time, I know, but because Pompey's where it is,
yeah,
pretty much every northern game is worthy of doing an overnight trip anyways. If you get further north than, I don't know, Stoke, you might as well just stay the night. So I always like an overnight trip, and it probably would have been an up and back if it had been a Saturday 3 o'clock, because it's Friday night 8 o'clock. There's actually a friend of mine who's a massive Pompey fan who flies in from Malta for as many away games as he can, and I'll be picking him up from Birmingham Airport on the way up. So alongside 1,600 other Pompey fans that are making the trip. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
And John Messino, obviously, was a massively fan favourite, obviously, with how he got you playing last season. And again, you've been first time in the Championship in a fair few years, if I'm right in saying. So you're kind of cutting your cloth in the Championship once again, which is great to see. But how has the fans taken to this season? What are the expectations from you, maybe pre-season, and obviously to how that started in the first quarter? Well, not coming up to the first half now; it's coming to Christmas. But I mean, how do you perceive it as fans? It's going on the pitch, and obviously within how the table is obviously panning out.
Yeah, we're getting there. So as of recording, we haven't seen the result of the games that are in the Championship tonight, and this might change, but we're off and out of the relegation zone, off bottom, out the Championship relegation zone for the first time since the 15th of September. So I think that maybe gives you an indication of where we are at the minute in terms of our form. And I've said this on quite a number of things that I've done over the past sort of since we've been in the Championship, is that league wins at the bottom of this division are in short supply. Like, there aren't that many teams that win a lot of games in the bottom half of the Championship. And I suppose that's the same for any league, but particularly this one, I've kind of noticed that wins are in short supply. And if you look at Millwall, who were right down there mixing it with us just a few short weeks and months ago, I know that's sort of Neil Harris is going, and that's a bit of a weird one, but in terms of results, they picked up a handful of 1-0 wins, beat Leeds and Burnley in that time, had a really good run, and all of a sudden we're back up to mid-table. And I'm really hoping that's the sort of thing that Pompey are embarking on at the moment. In terms of the manager and John Messino, to answer your question, it's brilliant from where I sit, because I love the bloke, that he is probably the only manager at the bottom end of that division that there haven't been any question marks about whatsoever from 99% of the fan base. So you look at Tim Volter, who's obviously left Hull now. They've got Ruben Sellers in. You look at Cardiff's managerial situation in terms of popping Omar Rizza in there after dispensing of their previous manager and having an Omar in an interim basis and then deciding to go with him. And then you look at Plymouth with Wayne Rooney. So, that's not exactly, they don't all love him down there at the moment, do they? So I think there's only... And I think Marty Cifuentes has come under pressure at QPR as well. So in terms of a connection between a fan base and a manager and a fan base, I don't think you're going to get a better case study than John Messino at the moment. Him and our sporting director, Richard Hughes, signed extensions to their already long-term contracts in the summer. So they're tied down for at least another 4 years, I believe. So that's a real project and a buy-in that the ownership and the chairman of the club, Michael Eisner, ex-Disney CEO, and the rest of the board and both John and Rich are all really aligned to and are really keen to continue to stay and work on a project. So obviously that's born out of winning League One with a couple of games to spare last season. Obviously that's born out of a number of really good transfer windows, and the recruitment department in League One was excellent. Championship, you put it really nicely actually earlier on, cutting our cloth accordingly. I think that's kind of what they tried to do, in my humble opinion, not wishing to upset the apple cart, but I think we maybe underestimated slightly what we needed in the summer. And actually this adjustment period in terms of us going more direct has really suited some of the players that we've actually bought in. January's still massive for us. Like, make no bones about it. We've had an uptick in form and we're really pleased, but at the same time and in the same breath, we still do really need to strengthen in terms of the depth of our squad in January. And I think there'll be a lot of teams down at the bottom saying the same thing. So, yeah, I think there's a really strong bond between John Messino and the club, not just because of what he's done in the past, but what he continues to do to date, and hopefully what he continues to do in the future as well.
Yeah, and one thing he did pride himself on last season in League One, and don't get me wrong, it is League One Championship. They are slightly different levels, and we've both probably seen that this year, but you got 41 goals conceded in the League One campaign last year across the entire season. You've already conceded 30 goals this year. Would you say, I mean, scoring wise, you're actually up there. You're only 1 goal beyond us on 21 goals. So, I mean, from 16th to bottom, you're one of the best. But in terms of the goals conceded, that's where I can see the problem. I mean, is that something that is maybe the outcome of the way you play and the style of play that Messina likes to do?
Yeah, there was a bit of a naivety to us in, I come back to the thirds that I mentioned at the start of the season. So maybe even that first third when we came out all singing, all dancing, as I mentioned, like, you go away, concede 3 to Leeds, you concede 2 to Middlesbrough. That middle third, there's a 6-1 defeat in there to Stoke. So I think that's maybe kind of warped it a little bit. There's a handful of other games off the top of my head. West Brom 3-0, I can remember. It's basically we were leaking goals like you wouldn't believe. You'll remember the name Conor Shaughnessy probably from our League One winning season. He's been sort of, he's sort of been out since, I want to say, early part of the season, August, September time. And that's, he's our best centre half, in my opinion, and probably our player of the season last year. So that's not been fantastic from a defensive point of view. Regan Paul came back from his ACL injury mid to late September. Of course, he'd been out for 9 months, so that doesn't help. And then, of course, we've had 3 goalkeepers this season. So started off with Will Norris. Jordan Archer comes in. Well, Nicholas Schmid comes in. Nicholas Schmid gets concussion. Jordan Archer comes in. Nicholas Schmid comes back in. No one's seen Will Norris for weeks. So it's all a little bit sort of, and that's not me making excuses, but that's maybe me trying to answer the question in terms of the goals conceded. I think if you have a look at the last couple of games, obviously didn't let one in against, we're 2 back-to-back clean sheets now. So I think that probably tells you a lot. And we haven't kept back-to-back clean sheets in the Championship so far this season, apart from these last 2. So that's maybe a bit of a reflection of where we are right now. But yeah, leaky defence because of a variety of reasons, personnel wise. Also, that, as I mentioned, the sort of the style of play and the going a little bit more direct and shutting up shop and pressing and getting to a point where if you can rely on your attacking players to score the goals, actually the pressure comes off and the shackles come off a little bit more defensively, don't they? So that's the kind of philosophy we're trying to adapt. But yeah, you're right to point out conceding goals because it has been an issue for us so far this season.
Yeah, and if you were a betting man and saw how the way we play and the way we've played over the last few games and the way you've played maybe in this back end of run of fixtures and where you got the positive results, how have you set up away from home and against teams maybe around you to try and get those positive results?
I think we'll try and play football. I think we will try and play football. We'll be positive with it. We'll be on the front foot and we'll try and press aggressively as much as we can. I wouldn't say that the game plan changes massively between away from home and at home. I just think at the bottom of the division, it's all about getting as many points as you possibly can. So you don't quite have the luxury of maybe sort of going for it a little bit more when you're on home turf. You got your own home fans and crowd behind you than you would away from home. I'm of the belief that at the bottom of the Championship, if you could get your home form right and nick a couple of points here and there away, then you're probably going to be all right and survive. And that's maybe something that we'll look to do. We've only won 1 game away from home all season, and that's QPR. And that was a battle of the survival of the fittest. Well, if you can think of something that rhymes with that, then there you go. That we were sort of on the right side of a really poor game on that occasion. And we were delighted. That was our first Championship win for 12 years. And you mentioned that we've been out of the league for quite a while, but that was quite a scrappy one, and not one that I'll look back on fondly and remember the performance. I'll remember the result, and that's probably about it. As a really poor goal that we conceded that day as well through Karamoko Dembele. So the away form will be worse than our home form on paper. And obviously I come back to that Stoke thing that all haunts our dreams as Pompey fans with the 6-1 defeat that's in there. There's also a really subpar away performance against Cardiff in there too. So we've had some bad ones, and we've had some bad ones against teams that have been down there with us as well, which is probably the worst thing. And I know you're not a team that's been down there with us and probably won't be a team that's down there with us, and given your home form, I can massively see that not being the case. In terms of yourselves, obviously both coming off 0-0 clean sheets in the week against good sides, and Burnley probably a better side than Norwich. From the outside looking in, I know there was you have such a weird love-hate relationship with Paul Warne as a fan base. It really bemuses me because I think he's great. And I can see why, if he was your own gaffer, I may put it this way, I think he's great when it's going really well, but then when the football's really rubbish to watch, I can imagine it being quite a bleak and depressing time for you. But I don't think there's a lot of shame in going to Leeds and getting beaten in the Championship. I don't think that's the case. I think you could even say if you go to Bramall Lane, if you go to the Riverside and you get beat this season, I don't think you can have an awful lot of qualms about it. That's probably more from our point of view at the bottom end than you guys sort of mid to lower end of the table. So, I think it's, that's a great, I saw a couple of clips today from the Burnley game. There's a few really good examples of proper defensive shutouts. I think Erin Cashin's like the highest for interceptions in the Championship this season, something ludicrous like that. So that's a player that has stepped up performing his duties at League One level and can do just as well in the Championship. I think that's a really positive sign and a real great quality of his. John Messino knows all about Curtis Nelson, of course, from his Oxford United days. So there's a few parallels. Of course, Marcus Harness, we know an awful lot about, and I used to really like him as a Pompey player. He divided opinions. Sort of, he'd turn up for one game, go quiet for three, and then turn up the next. I always really liked him and rated him as a Pompey player. I was gutted when he went to Ipswich, and I'm looking forward to seeing him playing in a couple of days' time. So yeah, no, plenty of narratives, plenty of what's the word?
Head-to-head matchups.
Draw. Yeah, plenty of matchups, definitely. Yeah. So and obviously the League One heritage, if you can call it that we have from the last couple of seasons. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and just before I ask you the final question that we ask all our guests, and that's your score prediction, I want the two side of the coin question. If you were going to pick a danger man from each side, one that you're kind of afraid of playing against that you might have seen this season, even into last season's squad. I mean, our squad doesn't really change much, and then also one player that Derby fans need to keep an eye out for. Who would you pick? I mean, if you want to pick my lookalike, more than welcome to.
I probably will end up doing so. Yeah, I would go with Ibu Adams for you guys. I think every time I've ever seen him play, he's always really impressed me. I just think he's. I think if you're a Pompey fan and all you've watched is Derby play Pompey, you'd probably go with Joe Ward because he scored those goals against us. Sorry, but scored both of them at Fratton Park. I don't know how much he's in the fold these days, but I would. I'd certainly go with Ibu Adams from my personal point of view. I just think he just has got that talent, and he just oozes the class, and he's everything you need at this level. For us, yeah, I think it's got to be Colby, hasn't it? He's obviously got the Forest connection, which he always prides himself on getting a goal, or there you go, prides himself. I hope you like that one. That was unintentional, but it's in there. Getting a goal or two against you guys. As I said earlier on, he's scored a couple against you at Pride Park. Moxon actually started on Tuesday night, and that reminded me of the screamer he scored against you in the 2-2 at Fratton Park last season, which we thoroughly enjoyed from our point of view. And I don't know whether it was Joe Wildsmith in goal at the time. He sort of got a hand to it and it went in. It might not have been Wildsmith.
I think it was. It was that period of time where he was actually out the side, and it was a substitute goalkeeper who's now not to be seen anymore. So yeah, right. So it might have been. It was that. I remember the goal because it was one of those that you go, could have maybe got a stronger answer to that, but it's still a great finish though.
No, absolutely. And I think Jerry Yates has been in fine goal scoring fashion so far this season, hasn't he, for you? So I know he's been a little bit quiet since Preston. But yeah, I mean, even his days at Blackpool, he always looked like a dangerous player whenever we came up against him. Or I don't know where we would have played him before. But I remember watching Jerry Yates playing against Pompey and thinking, yeah, you got something about you. There's always a bit of an eye for goal there. So yeah, no, I think it's a squad that's littered with talent all over the pitch. I really like Pride Park. I really like Derby as a club, and I think you guys have a similarity with us in terms of passionate fan base, follow up and down the land, always make a lot of noise, really generate a decent home atmosphere. And we always said at the time, didn't we, that neither side belonged in League One. And now here we are talking about a championship fixture, which I'm very much looking forward to, which I think brings you on nicely to your score prediction.
Yeah, go on. You've kind of alluded to it there. Go on, give me your score prediction for Friday night.
Every single time we've played each other since 2015, the result has always been a draw. So yeah, I think it'd be 5 draws on the spin. Everything's telling me a 2-2, a really exciting game. But I don't think I can be a Pompey fan and come on an opposition fan or a channel and not predict a Pompey win. So I think I'm going to go with a last-minute Colby Bishop winner, 2-1 Pompey. There we go.
2-1. Yeah, well, that's the opposite to myself. I'll stick with my one that I said on Sunday's show. I'll go with 2-1 Derby. But it's sure to be a great game. I think it's a 6-pointer for those. I think every game with teams in and around us for the rest of the season is going to be 6-pointers across the board. I think that's the same with yourselves. But Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure. I won't take too much more of your evening. And you do great content. Just give fans who are listening both sides of the coin, Derby and Pompey, where they can give you a follow.
Yes, I don't want to take up too much of your time either because you've got radio commitments to come. Just search for Fournilwrittenalloverit anywhere. YouTube's probably the best place to find us. Pompey home and away, and it's getting a lot better to watch than they have been in the last 2-3 months or so. So head on over. It'd be great if you could subscribe.
Brilliant. And as Tom said, subscribe if you did enjoy. Please do leave a like. We'll be back on Sunday to review the results from the week. Obviously, the 0-0 draw against Burnley, and then whatever the result may be on Friday evening. Tom, thank you again.
Thanks, mate.